Hello, I'm Reverend Michael Mugford, and I'm part of the ministry team at Cole Harbour Woodside United Church, along with the Reverend Krista Elizabeth Whedon, and I'm pleased to offer this spiritual reflection today. So we're coming up to the second anniversary of the pandemic hitting us here in Nova Scotia and the rest of the Maritimes and even the world. And it changed what the church looked like. For what we had hoped would only be a few weeks or maybe a few months, we very quickly had to figure out how to do church and determine what would we need in order to fulfill that calling. And over time, over the last couple of years, we've adapted and we've changed. So society slowly opened up for a little bit, and in-person church became a reality for us again. And here we are in the midst of the Omicron variant, and it felt like a huge step backwards to so many of us. And we've been told that there is likely no way to go back to our pre-COVID state. And so living with COVID and mitigating its effects as best we can is our current path for the foreseeable future. So what will the church look like as we move forward? How will we connect with one another? Where will we connect with one another? Might I suggest we go to the beach? Maybe I should say we should recognize that many of us are already at the beach. Are you confused? I was too. When I first heard this metaphor from the Reverend Jim Keats in a workshop I attended, Keats suggested that we look at our lives together as faith communities in a way that we look at a trip to the beach. Bear with me here. So we can divide where we want to be on this trip to the beach into three basic zones. There's the sand, there's the surf, and then there's the sea. So at the beach, there are those who like to sit on the sand and just relax, enjoy the sun. There are a few other people who like to get their feet wet and paddle around in the shallows. They like to enjoy the cooling benefits of the surf and the sunning on the sand. And then there are those who like to have nothing around them and just go out into the deep. So if the sand is the traditional in-person way of doing church and the sea is the online church, then the surf would be what we have come to call hybrid church. Now, whether we like the metaphor or not, this pandemic has rapidly accelerated the need for us to recognize that community is not only fostered by the sand or by the sea, but also by the surf as well. In other words, this pandemic has changed us. It's changed our lives as individuals and as communities of faith. If there is one thing that we as church communities do not like, it is change. We don't like it when the services change. We don't like it when the prayers change, and we certainly don't like it when the hymns change. And yet, for about 2,000 years, the Church of Christ has lived through change in the world around it. What has not changed, however, is the message of the gospel that has told us of God's love for creation from the very beginning of Genesis until today. Regardless as to whether the message is heard on a street corner or in an ancient cathedral, in a coffee shop, or even over the internet on our digital screens, the message of God's love remains at the heart of who we are and what we do. And the story of our scriptures shows that the people of God can and will worship together and will share in one another's lives, whether they are a nomadic people of the Judean wilderness, whether they're in captivity in Egypt or Babylon, whether they are struggling to find the way of Jesus, whether they're reformers of the 15th century, or maybe they're modern Christians living in a pandemic. We will worship together no matter the place or the mode. We will be the church. So maybe we should not be worried about in-person, online, hybrid. Maybe we should just concentrate on being the church in the here and the now. Maybe we should concentrate on holding one another in prayer, checking in on one another with calls and notes, or texts or emails or whatever you like. Maybe we could seek to dream as big as God dreams and not be daunted by the change, but instead embrace the ways of the one who makes all things new. Just some thoughts. See you at the beach.